Hello everyone, Shrouded Hand here. On this channel I talk a lot about the scary stuff that inspired me as a child. So here's one of the main things that influenced me into becoming interested in all things paranormal. When I was 4 years old, my family moved to Flintshire in North Wales, and as soon as I started nursery school, I started to hear tales about the ghosts of Wepre Park, a scenic wooded area that was very close to where I lived. The woods are steeped with folklore and history, so I decided to revisit North Wales and Wepre Park and record some footage so that I could share the ghost stories that I grew up listening to. At one end of Wepre Park lies the ruins of Ewloe Castle. Ewloe Castle was built sometime in the 13th century by the Prince of Wales to defend against the English. When Edward I invaded Wales in 1277, Ewloe Castle and the surrounding area was the scene of a huge battle. As a result, many lives were lost in the park, and some believe that the spirits of those who died in battle still haunts the castle. The sound of horses, marching, drums, and the noises of combat can be heard near the site of the castle, especially on this bridge, which was a scene of a particularly bloody battle. It is also believed that if you visit the castle during a storm, the noise of the wind whistling through the ruined walls transforms into the sound of a woman singing forlornly. Unfortunately, it was a calm, sunny day when I visited, so I was not able to test this out. Maybe I'll return in a future video for a more thorough investigation. Other strange sightings at the castle include glowing lights floating along the ramparts, the apparition of a headless monk, and the sensation of being pushed when at the highest part of the castle. I actually can't go to the top of the castle without feeling an overwhelming sense of fear, so much so that I had to get my wife to film this part for me, but that's probably more to do with my terrible fear of heights than anything else. All I know is the castle has a very spooky feeling to it, especially if you visit on a quiet day when nobody else is there. You get the sensation that you're being watched at all times. Very close to Ewloe Castle is an area known as the Devil's Basin. It's a part of the stream that drops suddenly into a circular hollow. Now, in all my years of hearing stories about Wepre Park, I've never been able to find out why Devil's Basin got its name. Obviously the circular hollow looks like a giant wash basin, but how it became associated with the devil, I don't know. There are many places around the world with similar names, such as the Devil's Punch Bowl in Surrey or the Devil's Cauldron in Dartmoor. From what I can tell, these places are usually large geographical formations that folklore tells us was built by the devil himself. Usually these places are very dangerous. It's possible that locals invented these legends to stop people going there and losing their lives. Perhaps the Devil's Basin was the scene of many deaths in the past, or maybe someone actually saw the devil washing in there, who knows. It definitely has an eerie, secluded feel to it. And I noticed that while I was stood next to the pool, the sounds of birds singing seemed to stop entirely. I even looked around to try and see if there was any birds in the trees, but the entire area seems to be avoided by the local wildlife. Maybe they know something we don't. As I was leaving, I also noticed how these rock formations look a bit like a hooded figure bathing in the pool. Maybe that's got something to do with the name. If anyone's got any more information about Devil's Basin, let me know in the comments. I'd love to learn more about it. The most famous ghost in Wepre Park is called Nora the Nun. Many people visiting the park have reported seeing a terrifying faceless apparition in a nun's habit. No one really knows who Nora is. There are many different stories about her, and each story contradicts the other. She apparently manifests at the place where she died. The only problem is, nobody can agree on where that actually is. The most common story is that a nun had an affair with a monk and became pregnant. After giving birth in secret, she got rid of the baby by throwing it from the top of Ewloe Castle. When her crime was discovered, she was bricked up alive in the walls of the castle and left to starve to death. Some people think that the ghostly singing that can be heard during storms is actually Nora the Nun, her body still trapped within one of the walls. Another location supposedly haunted by Nora is this waterfall. The story I was told growing up is that Nora fell from the top of the waterfall and was killed, and now her ghost pushes people who stray too close to the edge of the water. Searching online tells a completely different story. It seems that many believe that Nora was hit by a bomb during the Second World War whilst visiting the waterfall. Whether either of these stories is true is unknown, but there are many eyewitness accounts of seeing a ghostly nun in this area. I'll read two of them now. These come from a BBC article about Wepre Park. Beverly writes, 10 years ago, me and my partner went for a late evening walk in Wepre woods. As we approached the waterfall, we heard a humming sound, and when we looked around, there was nobody there. Following the humming, we looked up and saw a womanly figure walking across the top of the waterfall. As me and my partner walked away, my partner felt cold hands on his shoulder and the humming became louder. Looking up at the waterfall, the shadowy figure had gone. Chris tells a similar tale. He writes, "I was walking through the woods past the waterfall one day with a few friends. We were no older than 11, when I saw a nun stood on top of the waterfall. Not knowing what to say, I just pointed. My friends didn't see what I saw and just carried on walking. That night, when we got back to my friend's house, his mother told me about Nora the nun. I had no knowledge of Nora, yet I saw a woman of the convent on top of that waterfall." What's interesting about the waterfall is that if you take a long exposure photograph of it, the shape of a faceless nun can be seen in the rushing water. This is probably just caused by pareidolia, but it's an interesting coincidence nonetheless. There's also this old photo which appears to show creepy faces peering out of the trees. Again, this could just be an optical illusion, but when I was at the waterfall, I did notice that some of the surrounding trees were oddly twisted and malformed. Another Nora hotspot is Red Rock, a place that I used to enjoy climbing in my youth when I was less afraid of heights. People report seeing a nun standing at the top of the cliff, holding the bloody corpse of a baby. Some even believe that the rocks were stained red from the blood of a murdered child. One more location where Nora is seen is the fishing pond known locally as the Rosie. The story goes that either Nora herself fell in the pond and drowned, or that she drowned her illegitimate child in its waters. Now her malevolent spirit rises from the pool to frighten unsuspecting visitors. One eyewitness tells of his encounter. Hugh Williams writes, "I can remember seeing Nora the nun in the late 80s. In the summer months, I had gone fishing to the Rosie. This was when there was no path around the pond. It was 3 o'clock in the morning and it was heavily wooded. I had set up my fishing gear and was waiting for daylight when my dog started growling. It was a clear moonlit night when I saw this ghostly figure floating across the pond from left to right, going around the island, across the rest of the water, through the bushes and into one of the cottages that back onto the pond from Wepre Lane." There are probably other locations that are haunted by Nora, but these are the ones that I heard about growing up. I like that each story is different. It adds to the mystery of the legend. Who Nora is and how she actually died will never be known for sure, but sightings of this ghostly figure continue to be reported to this day. The last haunted location is the Pet Cemetery. Near to this site there used to be a stately mansion house called Wepre Hall. The landowners buried their beloved horses and dogs in a small cemetery, and the headstones can still be seen today. I've heard many stories about people visiting the cemetery at night and hearing the sounds of horses and dogs running past them. Other people report seeing a frightening black dog in this area, only to have it vanish before their very eyes. Interestingly, descriptions of this dog closely resemble an old Welsh legend called the Gwechgi. This legend is very similar to the English Black Shuck entity, a giant black dog that appears to lone travellers and is said to eat anyone who strays from the path. I actually think I encountered a similar entity as a child, an experience which I describe in my video titled "What Happened in the Woods," although that didn't happen in Wepre Park. In fact, in all my years of visiting this park and Ewloe Castle, I never had a single paranormal experience there. Maybe I'll have to return during the night or during a storm to do a proper investigation. There are undoubtedly many more spooky tales about this park to be told. I'm hoping this video will be watched by some locals who know more about the legends of Wepre Park. So if you're watching and you know any more stories, or you can elaborate on any of the ones that I've told, please share what you know in the comment section. I'd love to hear more. So I hope you liked this video. I've really enjoyed sharing the ghost stories that I grew up listening to. If you want to help out my channel, give this video a thumbs up. If you really want to help me out, consider supporting me on Patreon. So thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.